Hi there, Sparkrock community. We're pleased to announce version 24.5 for Sparkrock 365 2024 Release Wave 1. Now, if you've been following along, you might be thinking that's quite a big jump in version numbers, from 22.7 to 24.5. What's the story there? Well, this release heavily involves our friends and partners at Microsoft, because we're upgrading the Sparkrock 365 platform to version 24.5 for Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central 2024 Release Wave 1. There are a lot of updates in this release, so in this video we're going to cover some release highlights for bank deposit changes, bank reconciliation changes, the new analysis mode on list pages, some productivity enhancements, finance enhancements, report enhancements, and then we're going to do a more in-depth demo of the new analysis mode. So let's get started. In this release, Sparkrock 365 will be adopting the changes that Microsoft has introduced to bank deposits in Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central. Many of the changes are behind-the-scenes architectural changes, but the main user-facing change is that instead of the deposit screen, there's now a bank deposit screen. You'll see that they look quite similar, but the new bank deposit screen has a post as lump sum switch. That switch specifies if the bank deposit should be posted as a single bank account ledger entry with the total amount. When it's turned on, all entries will be posted in the same transaction with the document number of the bank deposit. Account sets and charitable receipts work the same with the new bank deposit screen as they did with the previous deposit screen. And you can see the release notes for more information. This version of Business Central has introduced changes to the bank reconciliation functionality. Depending on the way you currently do bank reconciliations, this may or may not impact you. If you currently use the bank account reconciliation screen with statement lines on the left and ledger entries on the right, there won't be any big changes for you. You can continue using it as you were using it before. However, if you're currently using the bank reconciliation worksheet, that has been deprecated by Microsoft and won't be available with this release. I'll briefly show the difference here, but there'll be a separate video with these release notes that goes more in depth. To start with, when you create a new bank account reconciliation, it'll now open up on the bank account reconciliation screen instead of the bank reconciliation worksheet screen. There's still the date and the statement ending balance that you enter, but instead of the checks and deposits and adjustment sections, there are now bank statement lines and bank account ledger lines side by side, and they'll either be automatically matched or you can do it manually. Transactions that are matched are shown in green, and you can suggest bank statement lines from the ledger section or manually enter bank statement transactions on the left and then transfer them over to the general journal. Once the balances match and everything's green and the difference is 0, it's ready to post. If you want to import your bank statement, you can do it with the import bank statement command. This will use the bank statement import format selected on the bank account card, which is selected from the bank import-export setup. This can be a bank feed or a manual import. And one final important note, since Microsoft is removing the bank account worksheet functionality in this version, it may be cleaner to make sure you have any existing bank account reconciliations completed before the release. Your historic reconciliations will still be available from the bank account card by going to Bank Account Posted Reconciliation Worksheets. We'll do a deeper dive into analysis mode later in this video, but when you're on a list page, there's a new Enter Analysis Mode action on the action bar. When you select that, it'll total up any fields at the bottom. You can also select specific amounts to narrow it down just to those rows, so it's great for getting quick one-off sums, averages, and other information. The real power comes with pivot mode though. Turn on the pivot mode switch and you can create a pivot table right in Sparkrock 365. In many cases, there's no more need to export to Excel, and best of all, you can create different reports on different tabs and share those tabs with others. More on analysis mode when we get to the feature demo part of this video. This version of Sparkrock 365 introduces a number of productivity enhancements. These are small changes that can add up to big improvements over time. We'll start with the modern action bar. Space is freed up a bit by removing the captions for search and analysis mode if you had analysis mode activated previously. The functionality is still the same. If you want to search for something, select search on the action bar, but most users don't need the word search there. It's just taking up space. Also, based on user feedback and Microsoft statistics on how pages are used, some actions are in more prominent places in the action bar. This reduces the number of clicks to reach frequently used actions and makes relevant actions more discoverable. There's also been some consolidation of functionality. For example, the process menu has now been renamed Home, and the most common activities for each screen are located there, grouped together. This renaming was done to better align with the ribbon technology in other Microsoft products. Also, since these are the most common actions, in many cases, the home menu will start in an open state. You don't need to keep reopening it over and over again. You have one-click access. Now, while we recommend using the new modern action bar, if it causes issues for your users or internal documentation, a user can go to Settings, My Settings, and enable Legacy Action Bar to make the action bar work like before with a process menu and the default closed state. Everyone hits errors in the system from time to time. Now Sparkrock 365 provides actionable platform errors. This takes two main forms. Number one, when you get an error, there's no more needing to take a screenshot or write down what it says. Now platform error messages have a share button, and you can copy the error details to your clipboard or share them in Teams or by email. Super handy. Even more helpful, in some areas of the system, and this will grow over time, error messages will provide links to the area of the system where you can fix that error. For example, you can see that the item we're trying to select on this purchase order has some problems. And there's a link straight to the item card where you can fix it. And then you can go back to what you were doing. Of course, if the user doesn't have permissions to fix it themselves, they can copy the error message and send it via Teams or email. This is what we mean about productivity improvements that just add up over time. When you're selecting a record, for example, a vendor, a customer, or an employee, you often have the lookup window. You've always been able to select from the full list, but now there's a Show Details link right in the lookup window if you need to check something out before selecting. Once you're satisfied, you can hit Escape or the back button to go back to your form and select the record. Here's another time saver. Tell Me is great for navigating to pages and reports, but now you can use it to search your own organization's data. For example, if I search for Athens, there's a new option for Search Company Data. It will return the items for my Athens desk, my mobile pedestal, but it will also show all the sales invoices, purchase orders, invoices, and anywhere else in Sparkrock 365 where Athens can be found. And then you can select the item to go straight there. You can also control where it searches to narrow things down if you'd like. So search for almost anything, and if it's in your customer data, Sparkrock 365 will find it. So those are some of the productivity enhancements in this version of Sparkrock 365. Now let's look at some finance improvements. Purchase and sales orders and returns aren't standalone. They're almost always followed by posted shipments, receipts, invoices, and credit memos. To get insight into the documents associated with an order, you can quickly access posted documents directly from an order or return. For example, on purchase order lines, you can now drill down on the quantity received and quantity invoiced. When the General Journal batch approval workflow is enabled and a General Journal batch is sent for approval, there's a new approval status field right there on the General Journal screen. And if an approver notices a mistake and tries to change the GL account, they'll be prompted with a message saying that you can't modify a record that's pending approval. The approver can then send a comment or reject the approval outright. In the past, a recurring General Journal with $0 lines would produce an error when you tried to post it. $0 amounts were just straight up not allowed. Now Sparkrock 365 will post the recurring General Journal, but will just ignore lines with $0 amounts when you use that fixed recurring method. This is handy because now you can have lines for, say, accruals that you may want to modify when you work with the recurring General Journal, but you don't want to have to remove the lines and remember to re-add them later if you don't have accruals for that particular month. You can use the reverse transaction action to reverse payments that were applied to entries that originated in foreign currencies and were adjusted using the exchange rate adjustment batch job. This feature works in both purchases and sales. So now you can easily undo mistakes that also involve currency adjustments. On the business unit screen, there's a new consolidation run status function so you can see when consolidations have been run in the past and if there were any errors. When you run consolidation, there's now a last consolidation ending date column so you can see when it was last run to. Sparkrock 365 has added 8 new Excel reports with new report layouts for finance, sales, and purchases. This is great because not only do you get the reports, but also data from the report request pages. These Excel reports are flexible and you can use them in the way that best fits your needs. You can use the reports as is just to get insights about your organization. You can use pivot tables to slice and dice data for analysis, or you can use them as a template to create your own Excel layouts for the same data. The following reports have been added to Sparkrock 365. Trial balance per budget, trial balance, trial balance by period, trial balance for the previous year, aged account receivables, aged account payables, customer top list, and vendor top list. Here's an example of the trial balance report. Run it in Sparkrock 365, choose your filters, and then it's set up in Excel, ready to print or manipulate. You have your raw data if you want to build your own off of this. And there's even built-in slicers to slice and dice the data. Now let's take a look at a more in-depth demo on some of the features of this release. Let's take a look at analysis mode in more detail. With analysis mode, you can analyze data from lists directly in Sparkrock 365 without needing to open the data in Excel or run a report. And you can create multiple tabs so you have different views of your data, just like you can have a bunch of saved filters. When you're ready to analyze your data on any list page, select the Enter Analysis Mode button on the action bar. When you turn on analysis mode, you'll see a few things right away. If you go down to the bottom, you'll see that amounts are totaled up, and you see there's a summary at the bottom telling you the number of rows. If you highlight some amounts, it'll show you the sum of those amounts and some statistics like average, count, and min and max. This is really helpful for those one-off checks. On the right, we have the field modifier area. This is where you can control the data you want to show. You can show all columns, or you can show no columns and then just start picking out the ones you want to show. For example, we're on this posted purchase invoices screen, and let's say we want to analyze these invoices by their due date and the remaining amount. So we'll start by clearing out the columns, and we'll add the invoice number, the vendor, the amount, the due date, and say the remaining amount. And now let's group it. You can see that when there's a date, it also gives you the ability to use year, quarter, and month for that date. So let's group it by the year, and then the due date month, and then let's group it by the vendor. We'll drag this over. And now when we open it up, you can see we can break it down due date year, due date month, the vendor, and then see the individual invoices if we want to do that. So you can see our analysis is taking place on this tab here. Let's rename it, and we'll say by due date. And we can add a new tab, or we can duplicate it. In this case, we're going to create an analysis just for remaining invoices, so we want to build it off this. So in this case, we're going to duplicate it, and let's rename it remaining. And in this case, we're going to use the Analysis Filters tab, and we're going to filter it on remaining amount. And we want that to be greater than 0. And then say we want closed to be no, and canceled also to be no. So now we can see we're just left with the invoices that have remaining amounts and aren't closed or canceled. And you can see that analysis mode is persistent. So if we go back here to the analysis mode button and we turn it off, we're back to our normal list view. If we enter it again, you can see those same tabs are there. And even though these tabs are just for you, you can copy a link and send it to a coworker. And if they have the rights, they'll see exactly what you see in this analysis mode. So analysis mode is cool so far, but just to take it to the next level, there's a switch here for pivot mode. Turn it on, and you can create persistent pivot tables just like Excel. So you can see we have this new column label section now. So let's drag the due date year and the due date month down to that columns label section. And now you can see we've got a pivot table with our year and month here along the top, and then our vendors on the left. And if we want to, we can freeze that column, freeze left, so that when we scroll over, that vendor number is frozen on the left. Analysis mode isn't just for financial data too. So for example, we're here on the employee screen. We can select analysis mode here. And let's say we want to build an analysis where employees are grouped by city, or say grouped by job title. As much as we love Excel, it's nice to have everything in one place, and the more you can do in a single tool, the more productive you'll be. We're so excited to bring the power of Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central 2024 Wave 1 to Sparkrock 365. Some of these features are small quality of life improvements, and some are big time savers that let you work with your Sparkrock 365 data like never before. We can't wait to hear what you think and your ideas for future releases. Thanks so much for watching.